on one of these streaming apps and we click on the streaming app and we see a name like Nas drops a new album, Jay-Z drops a new album, Kendrick drops a new album, J. Cole drops a new album, we know that we have gold in our hand. We know we have a diamond in our hand. We are going to prepare our whole day around listening to that album for pure.
Yeah. You know why that's interesting? Because when someone like McCartney or Bob Dylan drops a new album, I don't think, at least me personally, I don't think it's going to be great. You know, once in a while it is. I think Bob Dylan's last album last year was very good, maybe not great. But I think what you're saying is interesting because I think that maybe the rap audience has different expectations of their classic artists.
But it's,
I know, I'm
those are some really dope books, man. What are those? Are those album covers?
Behind me are box sets. You got the Art Tatum, you got Etta James, you got, this is a pianist from Russia called Sviatoslav Richter, classical music, Beethoven. I don't know if you can see up there, but Liszt. Where's my Otis Redding? Right behind me. Joe Henderson, jazz saxophonist. And you got Horowitz. I think those are the only ones in the shot.
David, bro, this is really dope, man. You're gonna, on one of these episodes, you're gonna have to educate people on the least. I'm gonna pick one of those artists.
Sure.
Because these are, like, Otis Redding is my favorite soul artist of all time.
Is he really?
Yes. The first time I heard an Otis Redding song was Change Is Gonna Come, which later I found out was remade. Sam Cooke did the original one. Right. But Change Is Gonna Come, I was like, yo, I was young too. I was like 15 on a bus, summertime, mad as hell. I had to go to work, but I was just mad. And the bus ride to work was like an hour ride. And I got on the bus at 6 a.m. And for some apparent reason, I took a CD. My dad had it on a CD. And I took the CD. And
go ahead.
I put it in. I put the CD. They don't. Yeah, that's right. For people who don't even understand that,
these are all CDs mostly. Some of it's fine, but
I put the CD in my CD player, and I get on the bus, and Change Is Gonna Come comes on, and then I'm like, the song is so dope. Right? Yeah, it just
that's got Booker T and the MGs on it in the back section.
It's a dope song, but it's also like
now. Can I just compare Otis and Sam Cooke for a second?
Yeah.
I think there's a mortal sound to Otis's voice. I'm not saying he's better or worse than Sam. Sam Cooke was his tone was perfect. He had less gravel than Otis. Otis, you could feel the humanity in it maybe more than any other soul singer, which is what I think you connect with. He's so he's filled with such poignancy.
Yeah, because I don't like, it's almost like, you're right. See, David, you're smart. I like soulful music. I like soulful music. And you knew what was the difference between why I like the Otis Redding song.
I love the Sam Cooke version.
Compared to the Sam Cooke, but I don't like the Sam Cooke version.
Sam Cooke's filled with strings, you know? It's filled with strings. It's more symphonic in texture.
Yeah, I was like, when I heard it, I was like, this is, I wanted the Otis Redding. It's almost like I don't like the Billie Holiday version of Strange Fruit. I like the Nina Simone version.
Oh wow!
But the Billie Holiday version is
the Billie version a few hours ago today.
You said what?
I was just listening to Strange Fruit today.
Which one? Actually, Billie Holiday or?
I got it here. I don't know where it is.
Was it, which version was it? Was Billie Holiday or
yeah, Billie.
Yeah,
that's the original version.
The original version, and it's like I'm an advocate of some songs. Originals are better than the samples, but maybe because I'm a hip hop head, I tend to like the samples better than the originals. And some songs, like "Today's a Good Thing." "Today's a Good Day" is the only balanced song in my thought pattern of songs, and I'm like, I can pick and choose. I will listen to the Isley Brothers. I think it's "Footsteps in the Dark," and I will listen to "Today's a Good Day," and really be like, okay, I want to hear both of these songs at the same time because they're good.
You know what I was thinking relative to this? Two things. One is that unless the very first time we hear something, it's a really bad version, we generally, I think, tend to prefer the first version that we hear. It's just if we become familiar with something, and
Oh,
it's good. We just that's our first experience with it, so we
oh,
have a
you're right, you're right,
feedback
you're
in
right.
our mind. The other thing is, and tell me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong here. Rap music doesn't get covered because you can't rap someone else's rap. It's too personal to them. Is that accurate, or am I making this up?
Not at this generation is the first generation that did it.
They're
It's
they're covering rap.
weird. It's weird.
They're
Yeah, it's weird. It's super weird.
tell me
Fabio,
about this.
yeah,
That's
Fabio
crazy.
Foreign does it. Kodak Black um
So
and
he'll spit a verse completely not his own.
no, it's the song. They remade the same song. So for example, can't stop. The Puffy song with Little Kim. I forget the sample of it, but Kodak Black and Puffy's son just remade that song. So they're
What are they
remaking.
putting new raps on it, or are they? Or are
They're putting
they?
new raps, but it's the same.
Right.
It's like it's
But
new raps, but it's the same exact song.
same
Like
backtrack, but new raps. I could see that, but no one's gonna do someone else's rap.
nobody's gonna now. It's interesting. Like Illmatic, for example. Illmatic
Mhm.
is considered the greatest rap album of all time.
Mhm.
Argue with me. I will argue all day long about.
I'm not equipped to argue with you on that.
No, I'm not saying you're going to argue because people will listen to this and argue with me. I will argue with you all day long about this. Illmatic's
Rap,
great.
rap has evolved so much since Illmatic that you could make an argument that there are other areas that Illmatic doesn't touch. Like now in rap music, you generally have a hook, a singing hook. It's not on Illmatic. I'm not saying that makes it worse or
No,
better. I'm not.
I got you. Like it is some people that will go out here and get a Shelby and decide to put it on a race with a Ferrari. And there's people that will put money on the Shelby because they're like, this car is from the 60s and it's a pure muscle car and it's pure to the purest of how a car was supposed to be built. And this car is a Tesla or something, and they got all this new stuff. And the Tesla might beat it, but everybody knows the Shelby is a better car. That is where Nas Illmatic is. I was speaking about this yesterday. Like we once in a while in hip hop get gems, just like in rock or any other music form. We know the difference with when an artist we know which artists of ours put out a real gem, not on album sales or nothing. If you for hip hop, right? If it's Friday and we get up and we go outside and we get on one of these streaming apps and we click on the streaming app and we see a name like Nas drops a new album, Jay-Z drops a new album, Kendrick drops a new album, J. Cole drops a new album, we know that we have gold in our hand. We know we have a diamond in our hand. We are going to prepare our whole day around listening to that album for pure.
You know why that's interesting? Because when someone like McCartney or Bob Dylan drops a new album, I don't think, at least me personally, I don't think it's going to be great. Once in a while it is. I think Bob Dylan's last album last year was very good, maybe not great. But I think what you're saying is interesting because I think that maybe the rap audience has different expectations of their classic artists.
It's funny you said that because it's like McCartney is considered a classic artist in rock. Nas
Right.
considered a classic artist in rap. I don't know if rap has got to the point where like would it be comparable to like if Bruce Springsteen put out an album? Are there any rock albums that get put out that people are like, I need to listen to it, or has it passed that?
It's interesting. Maybe because these rock artists we're naming are quite old in comparison to even Nas, who's old
Yeah.
now. But maybe 20 years ago it was different. I think today, if Bruce Springsteen released an album, it's not going to be an instant classic.
What about you?
What about U2?
Yeah.
I don't think U2's released a classic album in 20 years, like a truly classic album. That's my opinion. I think Everything You Can't Leave Behind was I think that's the name of the record. That was their last great, like really great album. They've got a number of classic albums, at least 5 I can think of. But no, I don't think
it's because, do you think this is a reason because hip hop is at a point where it's at like it's still in its pop phase.
Yes, I think it's because hip hop is a highly relevant music that the
I got
classic
you.
artists can make an impact. Rock music, sad to say, because I'm a big rock fan, it's tapered off into almost a museum piece. It's
Well,
not really.
it was interesting. I was talking to somebody recently, and they listen to metal. They
Sure.
love metal.
Yeah.
Now, is it hit rock has got to where you just pick a genre, you go with that genre, you don't really go outside of that genre?
No, rock, I'm bracketing metal included in that, but there's great rock music today. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely great rock music today, but the classic artists, they aren't awarded the assumption that that before you hear it, you're holding gold in your hand. I really don't think so. I think back maybe 20 something years ago that was true. If Bruce Springsteen dropped an album in the 90s, I remember I was a kid, but I remember people were really open to it being a classic. You could feel the energy was different at that time.
Ah,
It was met with, oh, this is still part of the culture. This is part of the tapestry of our society. Today, I don't know that that's true anymore. And I don't know because rap and hip hop as a genre is popular music today. That is what most younger people are listening
it is
to,
the
or at
pop
least,
music of its time.
right. So it is part of the culture
Is you
in a way that, unfortunately, for other genres like rock and obviously even
well,
worse genres,
country
country country music is big right now, right?
is that this
Country,
I would say rap's number one, country's number two.
they're just different sections of the
Which
world.
is funny is that country and rap are very similar. That's why, as much as I don't really,
Yeah,
so I'm not a
yeah.
big fan of Little Nas X. The reason he gets right, like, the reason he could
He's
get
an interesting artist, though.
he's
He's
extremely
interesting.
interesting. He's a Kanye West type artist. Like, not trying. When I say Kanye West type artist, I mean like he's an artist who will sell controversy to get records. He loves to sell
Right,
controversy. And that's how
right.
he gets people to support a lot of his music. He learned that the opening was country because the equivalent of what country music does and hip hop does. Do you know hip hop and country music do the same exact things? They tell a story, right? Do you
Right,
know
and they deal with the day to day, the day to day
the same?
experience.
It's telling a
Yeah,
story, right? Do
yeah.
you know, right? And this is an interesting fact. Hip hop was created by a Jamaican, right? Kool Herc is Jamaican. His family comes from Jamaica, right? His roots are tied to Jamaica, and a lot of the things he was using was samples of artists and groups that we know of now. They're not from Jamaica, but they're like groups like Queen and people like that using those records to sample
We
the
will rock
music.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, cutting the songs. Now, when you
Yeah.
look at reggae gets a lot of its influence from country. Now, the interesting aspect about country music and Jamaica is that when you live in Jamaica, and I learned this about people who grew up in Jamaica, they only get like two channels on the TV. So the stuff they
Yeah.
see is usually like a Western or something on TV. And then the music they get over is a lot of country music. Like the popular music they play in America during the 50s and 60s was the music they could hear. They didn't hear anything else really. And then they would see shows about cowboys and stuff. So you would understand how a country like Jamaica would have a strong influence of reggae music comes from
Hmm.
country music. So when you see, like I was listening to Sean Paul on the radio, and they do this thing. It's on High 97. It's called like Whitish Wednesday. They play a song that a white artist created, and then and the black people have to guess the song. So they have artists come in. It's a really a cool show because
Is it
it's a
like songs that were sampled or
just
completely?
any initially it was any song. Now they have broken down into like they'll say a type of genre you have to go for, like 80s pop. And it's more like now it's more like verses, like it's two artists battling because they did it so long
Mhm.
that black people now know a lot of rock songs and jazz and a lot of songs we never would have learned about but because they play it, and then because Rosenberg is the only white person on the show, he'll know a lot of these songs because he grew up with it, and they're DJs too, so they know a lot of songs. They might do bar mitzvahs, weddings, things like this that they have to play these songs. The black people have to guess the song, but sometimes they bring artists on the show. So Sean Paul came on the show, and they did country for him, and he had to guess the country song. He knew every song. He's like, bro, country is so important. Country is so important to my reggae. They were playing. He played that Dolly Parton.
Yeah, I didn't know the connection between reggae and country. I had no idea about it.
Super important.
That's awesome.
Country is so important to reggae, which you can come back around and say, well, maybe some 6 degrees of separation, country influenced hip hop, right? I don't know, but it could be a conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking that all these genres, reggae, country, hip hop, rock and roll, R&B, they all intersect at the fact that they're all somehow related to the blues. They're all somehow related to the blues.
They are.
If you go back 100 years, that is the seed. And that is the first music of the day to day. That's the first music where people would just talk about their ordinary lives and experience.
It's funny that when you say the blues, how does jazz tie into the blues?
Jazz music was actually just part of the blues at the beginning. Louis Armstrong was playing. I mean, most of the songs are called like Potato Head Blues or West End Blues. That's his greatest song, maybe.
Okay.
And it's a 12-bar. It's a 12 in music. It's like a 12-bar arrangement. You embellish upon it. The 12-bar is the 1, 4, and the 5 chord of the scale. But without getting into technicalities, everything up until even today, everything in popular music started at a blues tonality. But in the last 20 years, we've started drifting away from a blues tonality. I think it has to do, and I'm just guessing from my own experience, I think it has a little bit to do with auto-tune and pitch correction, removing from music the subtle bends that the average voice will do automatically. Now, that's just my assumption. I've read a lot on this, and other people have said that. Some people have suggested other things. If you go to Europe and you look at European genres, they are less related to the blues. A lot of the bands that I love, from like the Rolling Stones, Zeppelin, they are based in the blues. But then you can look at a band like Judas Priest, metal band, Iron Maiden. They start walking away from blues tonality. Country music, at its beginnings, Jimmy Rogers was basically a blues singer, just like Robert Johnson. They were doing similar things. And really, in the birth of rock and roll, you can't really tell a blues artist from a country artist. Johnny Cash was doing country.
Yeah.
Elvis was doing rock and roll. There's not much of a difference.
Where would you say, like, okay, would you say the influence of a group like the Rolling Stones or Beatles is directly tied to Chuck Berry, Little Richie, or Muddy Waters, Baby Huey, like those?
Well, the Rolling Stones named themselves after Muddy Waters' song, but and the Rolling Stones met. It's funny, you named 2 artists, the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. They met at a record shop when Keith Richards, I believe, was holding a Chuck Berry album.
Okay.
And Mick was like, hey, I like that. And they became friends because they both knew who Chuck Berry was and they both liked him.
So during that time in the UK, was the artist that you're talking about, right? Were those same records being in the same record stores in America, or they were only being over there?
It was much more the black artists from America were much more popular in the UK in the 50s with white. Obviously, in Europe, there were a predominantly white audience there, and they were very popular. They weren't really popular with white audiences as much in the United States. Because everything was segregated in those regions. It was very regional.
What year would you say this is? 50s, late 50s, early 60s?
56, 57.
56. So would you say Elvis?
That's when the Beatles formed too, around then.
Was Elvis at this time? Would you say Elvis when we look back to history, it's I laughed about to say 20 years from now, everyone's gonna say Eminem created rap, right? People like, what Eminem created what? But when we look back to it,
someone that says that, right? Go ahead.
nobody's gonna say it because we have way more than enough history to know. But it's funny because we look at rap, when you look at rock, you say, name an artist from rock and roll, and you do a Family Feud question. Elvis' name will probably come up like very high on that list.
Well, he's named the king, just like Benny Goodman was named king of swing. He didn't invent swing, and he wasn't the greatest, even probably wasn't the greatest swing artist. But swing was separate from jazz, and I think that it never. I think there was a feeling later and addressed by Public Enemy, and you would know better than me, that there's a racial thing about the fact that Elvis would be called the king of rock and roll when he really was just transposing what black.
Let's fight the you say it, fight the power. Elvis,
yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah, right. He's like Elvis never.
I'm not the biggest Elvis Presley fan. I think he had enormous talent, but for me, his legacy. I don't want to say he's overrated because his influence is not overrated. His influence is enormous. You could feel his influence today. I think Justin Bieber is a descendant of that influence. You know, any male icon who's selling sex appeal as part of the musical package
is
related to Elvis, and that's a big part of our culture. I'm not saying Elvis was really the first one, but he was the first one to really cross a line where I think people were extremely conscious that sex was being sold to them. Frank Sinatra was considered sexy. Bing Crosby was considered sexy preceding Elvis, but they weren't selling sex.
No, it's like it's comparable to Queen Latifah. Totally not Queen Latifah. It's comparable to Salt and Pepper to Little Kim, right? Salt and Pepper had Push It, and then Little Kim had Hardcore Album where every song was extremely sex. But she probably created every female artist after that.
Nicki Minaj is a descendant of Little
Nicki
Kim.
Minaj, Cardi B, Glorilla, Megan Thee Stallion. Every artist that's a little, which is another conversation we have another day at how the female rappers now are probably at the highest peak they've ever been in rap's history because
Cardi B, on a personal level, you like Cardi B or not really?
I like, so this is what I tend to do. I tend to take my gender out the picture and say, would I like this artist if they were a male? And then that's how I don't get biased to the fact that she's a female doing this. I like Cardi B because if Cardi B was a male, she would be very comparable to an artist like I don't want to. I'll be very careful about how I say it. She's real. She's authentic. It's very comparable to a DMX. Like she has songs where she's talking about her, like her song that she broke her out. That she took the Kodak Black sample with Bodak Yellow because the original song was a Kodak Black song, and she just named it Bodak Yellow because his name is Kodak Black. And the whole song, she's not selling sex. Yeah, cool. The whole song, it's original. It's the song that made her blow. She comes from reality.
I know the song, I just didn't know the original.
It was a getting back to the fact of like what rappers tend to do is they'll jack a beat. So a rap, that's a big thing in hip hop. I take a rap song that another artist rapped on top of, I take that same beat and do a better version of that song on their beat. And it's just jacking the beat and then doing a better version. So when she did Bodak Yellow as a reality star, and then she's being really authentic in the song, she's not selling sex at all in that song. She's just being authentic. Like, I'm getting money. I'm out here. I don't got to strip no more. I'm making money doing this. Boom. So she's extremely authentic. And I love that because when you listen to her, she doesn't only have one track mind. I hate rap artists who have no other. They can't diversify who they are as an artist.
Name an artist that you don't like, that you're referring to, that kind of thing.
All right, so give example. And this is a debatable thing, right? There's lots of rappers that put music out, but all that music sounds the same. You are okay with it because you know what you're gonna get. Like, for example, a new artist will think about like a Dave East. If you listen to Dave East, you know what you're gonna get. He's not going to rap.
I actually don't know who that is.
These are newer artists. So Davies is very comparable to like a prodigy of our time. Like
But maybe he hasn't had enough time to evolve. So
the funny thing is a Davies early version, I could very much like hear a whole album of him and be like, man, I don't have time. New Davies has evolved. It's because he's got better. So now his albums are more solid. But like a Avado is still in that concept of still rapping.
They're a classic rap artist.
That's rap the same stuff
that you don't really like.
All right, so I gave the newer artists, the older artists, and at the time people said it. That's why you don't hear a lot of their music anymore. They didn't break the future. So like now people might get mad about what I'm going to say, but I care less. I love Prodigy all day long.
As long as I don't get mad. As long as I don't get
mad. Like I love Prodigy all day long. But when I listened to Mobb Deep, I knew what I was going to get with a Mobb Deep song. Because they're gonna say this something, and it's not nothing wrong with Prodigy, but he raps the same thing. And maybe Prodigy is not a good example, but you could tell like an artist that is really good, you have to accept them for what they give. So like a rapper like Raekwon and Ghostface, they're gonna give you a poetic explaining of how they can sell drugs and also are stylish. And then Ghostface now has changed it to be a ladies' man, which I like that aspect of it because he got himself out of just only talking about drugs to now he's putting more into like Ghostini. He's the ladies' man, and it's like people love the fact that he's rapping in a different type of genre. I'll give an example. Drake is a one-track artist. You're not going to...
Drake, I don't know. I know
Drake is gonna he will once in a while give you a rap song about rapping, but most of the song you hear Rick Ross. You know a Rick Ross song when it comes on, it's very melodic sound. He's gonna rap about the same thing. Like you don't have a very diversified portfolio. A lot of people say that about J. Cole. That's why I was like, yo, I like J. Cole, but he just sounds the same every song. It's like but I like a substance rapper, so I'm gonna be like, nah, J. Cole sound like Nas.
That's the trick of Kanye. His songs have a lot of dimension musically.
Kanye becomes a Jay-Z, a Kanye West. You don't know what you're gonna get. Kanye West, especially, you don't know what you're gonna get. Right. That's what I was listening to. I was listening to Common speak about. Common's a very, 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 very unique rapper. Because he's produced songs with Jay Dilla, he's produced songs with No ID, and he's produced songs with Kanye West. When you get it saying that he produced his whole B album with Dilla. Now, Dilla's probably considerable top 5 of all time, if not top 3 of all time. We could argue it, but to me, he's top 3 of all time. Premier is my favorite, so we can go back and forth with it. And then the second, third. I can argue, but it's gonna probably be Dilla.
You're ranking, so I have a question coming up related to this.
I just thought about well, producers. I'm thinking of producers, but when I'm listening to Dilla's comment says Dilla was the most. He was the most creative. He said Dilla was the most creative. No ID was the most authentic. He would constantly say, we have to do this for the culture. We have to do things like that. That is, his things was all about authenticity, making sure integrity, staying real to the culture. That was No ID. And Kanye West was the vision. Dilla and No ID were quiet. Kanye West is loud. Kanye West has a vision. Kanye West can see things that nobody sees. He was like, yo, you do a song with Kanye West, he's going to tell you every element of this song, who we're going to get to put, oh, your voice sounds better with this producer, so I don't have to produce it. Or no, we need this feeling to feel like we're going to be in Chicago at this time. So when he does the corner with him, he knows how the corner is going to sound, down to how the video is going to be, what street corner they're going to be on. He is so authentic with the vision. So when you listen to these 3 producers, you understand like all 3 of these producers, including the Kanye West, are people who can change the dynamics of how we look at hip hop on multiple levels. So,
well, what makes a great producer? That's a hard one.
That is, it is.
Well, in hip hop, I think, in rock music, it's even harder, maybe, because I think a producer has a much bigger function in hip hop than in any other music. Um, you know who Phil Spector is? Phil Spector was a
Phil
producer.
Spector. He's from.
He became a convicted murderer and died in prison.
Yes, that's why I saw a documentary.
Yeah, yeah. But he, in a way, I'm just doing a parallel. He, in a way, was what a lot of hip hop producers are today, which is he was the major mind behind most of the hits that he had. He knew exactly how to get the final product with artists that he was working with. I think that hip hop producers are as much a part of the creative experiment in hip hop as the actual rappers, maybe more in some cases.
Will you say, okay, so this is it's interesting. When you look at hip hop when it comes to producer, always remember the producer just is the DJ. Right? That's it. That's all it comes down to.
Well, I think they're more than that, but yes.
No. The producers because the DJ became obsolete. So like hip hop started with the DJ. The rapper became more important. The DJ turns to the producer. So instead of the DJ cutting songs, now he just makes the beats and produces the tracks. That's why every single producer was a DJ for the most part, right? You can look down in the history of it. Clark Kent found Jay-Z. DJ Clark Kent. He gets Jay-Z on. Dre was a DJ. DJ Khaled, right? It's like you could just go down longer.
DJ Khaled?
I like DJ. These artists are not hip hop is different now. So if you have money, are you really good? DJ Khaled's a good artist. Don't give nothing from DJ Khaled. He's a good DJ. Don't forget about Fat Joe, who needs to get his flowers at every moment you can think of, because there's no groups like this if it ain't for Fat Joe. Fat Joe has found so many iconic rappers. Fat Joe comes out late 80s. He was on DITC with Big L, Fat Joe. I can't even think of all the members of the group at this moment, but then you get groups. He finds Punnin, the Terror Squad, Khaled. From Khaled, you get a branch of all of these other artists that come from it, Ross and all these other people. So you see where his influence is, but when you really think about it, all of these rappers come from the Bronx at an 80s time, where the DJ comes as a package deal, right? You get KRS-One and Scott LaRock. You get Eric B and Rakim, right? You get
right. That's true.
They all come as a DJ, right? Yeah, he was a DJ.
I never pieced that together, but yeah.
Jam Master Jay and you really want to think about Mobb Deep. Havoc was the DJ.
It's interesting. In the beginning, the DJ took precedence over the rapper.
Always.
Always. And it's that way, I think, with the producer too. Producer has an enormous influence on the final record.
The DJs of that time are really good producers. So we know them as their producers. We forgot they were DJs. So when you're like, oh, I love Premier, you be like, okay, Gangstar, Guru and Premier. RZA's a great producer. Now RZA's interesting because RZA made beats. If you watch the Wu-Tang thing on Hulu, you learn about him. But RZA created this group as starting out as a rapper, Prince Rakeem, and then decides to come back to his neighborhood and create a group around it with the Wu. Havoc and Prodigy. Havoc makes some of the dopest beats in hip hop history, right? Yeah. Shook Ones comes from Havoc, which is tied to Prodigy and Mobb Deep. So the producer now is just, we got to always remember the producer of rap starts with the DJ, the MC, the breaker, the dancer, breaker or whatever, popper, the graph, tagging, whatever you want to do, the graffiti artist. And then the last element is tied around street consciousness, street knowledge, whatever, street entrepreneurship. But those are the foundations of hip hop. So each one of these is tied to the foundations of the arts in school. Theater, dancing, right? Music is the DJ or the rapper. Art, like regular visual art, painting is the graffiti artist. And all on another note, of all of those ones I said, the most important to hip hop being able to move from just being a Black and Latino art form to being an art form that white people could feel comfortable listening to comes from the graffiti artist.
You think so?
It's known.
Okay, so that's interesting. I'd be curious to know how that came to be.
Think about the 80s. We have lots of music happening in the Bronx. Also, we have punk happening in Lower East Side. And Flash is the biggest name. Everybody's taking Flash tapes. His tapes are going around the Bronx, things like this. Everybody knows who Flash is. Fab Five Freddy's a graffiti artist, just like Basquiat's a graffiti artist. These are graffiti artists. Fat Joe's a graffiti artist. KRS-One's a graffiti artist. Every element. I love hip hop because I was a graffiti artist. Like, I started in that realm. That's where I first loved hip hop, was from graffiti art. The tag.
How did it make its way to
because
making? Yeah, go ahead.
Because the artist, graffiti art is just art, spray paint on the wall, right? It's still art though, and those same elements.
Certain style to the graffiti art you're speaking of, though.
Yeah, it's style too, but it's still in the realm of art. You can respect an artist, like an artist who might do pop art or might do impressionism or surrealism, or you can accept all of them. It's just a different form of art. So because of that, the Art Deco movement that was happening in Midtown and areas like that with Andy Warhol and all these other artists, people like Fab Five Freddy and people like Basquiat would go down to these areas in Midtown and talk to the Art Deco movement. And now you're in the white world and telling them stories about what's happening in the Bronx. It's the 70s, 80s. Nobody's going to the Bronx unless you live in the Bronx. And it's not internet age. You don't know what's going on. But if you hear Fab Five Freddy telling people about, yo, this is what we're doing in the Bronx. Yo, we're doing this rap thing. It's dope. Yo, y'all gotta hear it. It's this and that. And you're telling about, yo, Grandmaster Flash is this and that moon. Fab Five Freddy's telling them this. Now, they don't know what's going on, but they know something dope is going on. So when you get groups like Blondie come out with like the rap shirt, she is talking about what Fab Five Freddy's telling them, because Fab Five Freddy's in the Art Deco movement. So when she says Fab Five Freddy, tell me everybody's right. Flash is this, Flash is that. She doesn't know.
You know, right around even earlier than Rapture, there's this famous Rolling Stones song from 1978 called "Shattered."
Mm-hmm.
There's elements of rap, early rap, in the way that in the way that it goes. I'd want you to hear it. You probably haven't heard it, but it is about New York. It's about the subculture in New York, and it's very hip hop, like, for at least for that time, 1978.
1978, hip hop gets out. 1977, summer of 1977, hip hop leaves the Bronx with the blackout. Right, so
a band like the Stones would catch on that early.
Yeah. I wasn't in New York in 1970, in the 70s, but I heard a lot of stories. My mom tells me about it. If you were living in New York in the 70s, you probably were living really authentic, a great time to live in New York. You got two art forms being created at the same exact time. Every single corner probably was dope, right? Everybody was trying it.
You're 54, right?
Yeah, next year is the 50th year anniversary of it. So 1973.
A lot of people that lived in the 70s were in New York remembered for being a very poor time. A very run down time.
The difference is
that's why hip hop and punk happened at that time.
Exactly. Nobody. So do you think if from the outside looking in, right, you'll see a all poor area, but if you're the inside looking out, you're probably like, yo, this is a fun time to be around. There is lawlessness, and we could do right. We do whatever we want.
New genres of any kind of art usually come from not necessarily poor, but from ousted people that need to express something that is not being allowed to express in the regular standards of culture. That's just the way it is. That's the way new art is.